Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stoked, the ultimate Star Trek online podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Jeremy.
Did you like how I mixed it up there, Jeremy?
A little bit.
Did I throw you for a loop?
Yes. I wasn't actually sure if we were starting. Are we on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I say, you know what? I liked it. You know what else I liked? Well, I'll save it. But today was part 2 of the new Dividian weekly series, and we got our hands on that. We've played through it this morning, and we've got the highlights.
And the lowlights.
Uh-oh.
After that, we'll be talking about ships. We got some information on the new Vorcha that also landed today.
Plus the Nebula.
Yeah, I've been flying the Nebula for a week now. And
so why don't we start? Let's start at the top of the show. Give me your thoughts on the Nebula right now. What do you think?
Okay, well, in a nutshell, I don't like it. I've already mentioned before that the aesthetics, the look of the ship, do not please me.
I normally am honestly not a huge fan of some of the cryptic ship customization options. I generally go. I tend to go more towards stock.
The classic stuff, yeah.
Not always, but a little. But I really like the ones you came up with.
Yeah, it's mostly the alternative skin that they rolled out with it. I forget the name.
I thought it gave it a new, more kind of aggressive, modernized 2409 kind of look.
Yeah, I don't hate it as much. But you know what? My actual complaints about the Nebula, and I don't really want to call them complaints, just downfalls for my particular play style.
Which is? Don't
really have anything to do with the looks.
You should say you're a science guy.
I am a science
You love
officer.
all the science abilities.
So primarily I'm going to be comparing it to the Deep Space Science vessel, which I've been flying for, forever, really. So it was a nice design, and I like the stats and all the science abilities. Now with the Nebula, you sacrifice at least one of those high-end science abilities to have this universal bridge officer slot. In the Deep Space Science vessel, you had a commander slot and a lieutenant.
If it's universal, couldn't you make it science?
But it's not as high rank.
And there's the problem.
Right.
Gotcha.
So I lose out on some of the high rank, more powerful abilities that I had, and I either have to downgrade them to a lower ability or just find something else.
So what do you lose going back to the Deep Space Science?
What do I lose? Well, the tachyon deflection grid.
The nice thing, I guess, what I want to say, the nice thing about the tachyon deflection grid is you don't all have to be Nebula ships.
No.
And I really pleased with that because and also it's a cool graphic.
Yeah, it really is cool. I'm
hoping
that they can adapt that into. They've been talking about the Tholian web effects, and I actually kind of have a feeling that they started working on those and ended up giving it to the Nebula. So it's neat to see.
It's good theory.
But yeah, that's a really cool power.
And it works well.
Any friendly ship within 10 kilometers of you extends the range of that ability by up to an additional 10 kilometers. So if you stack up a whole bunch of your friends 9 kilometers away from each other, the buff travels all the way down the line.
But look, come on. Realistically, I can think of a single play type scenario where that would be useful.
PvP versus Klingons.
And that right there, I think, therein lies the answer. If you should pick up the Nebula, if you think it's worth the points, if you are a PvP player and you science, which I guess some of you exist. Okay, so I don't know if that's enough to make up for the lower rank universal slot.
I don't either. And for PvE, I just find it lacking. It doesn't have any other stats that really make it stand out.
I totally agree with you on PvE. I don't know if I would have a recommended buy on that.
It has the same weapon slots, the same maneuverability, same stats, ship, hull, shield, everything. No, you don't.
So I know maybe some of you have a different take on it. I think there's definitely a spot for this. Mainly your PvP science officer. And we'd love to hear what you think, though. So leave us a comment or send it over to STOked@JupiterBroadcasting.com, and we'd like to hear those.
Now, next we want to talk a little bit about the Vorcha, another ship that landed today.
The Klingons got some
but
love.
You know what? Before we land into that, I do want to mention that I was so unimpressed with the Nebula that I went and got my Intrepid finally.
Oh.
So now I'm going to be trying that out. If I have anything noteworthy to mention on that, maybe I'll bring that up next week.
Oh, well, yeah, I noticed you slipstreaming right past my face in sector space today.
Vice Admiral, finally.
Yeah. I was like, oh, nice. There goes Jeremy. And like, wait a minute. Those are nacelles that are up.
Yeah, they move. I don't like them in sector space sitting straight up. I don't think it looks right. But it's nice to see them move. And I know a lot of people out there have been looking for that.
Yeah, I guess I haven't seen the new Intrepid model much, and you've modified it some.
Yeah.
But to see the warp nacelles up was definitely that seems awkward. I think because in Voyager's case, they weren't directly up all the way.
Right. I'm using a version of nacelles that sit at a 45 degrees.
Yeah.
So in sector space, they're sticking straight up.
Right. So I think that's where that's a little awkward comes from.
Right.
But otherwise, I thought it was a pretty good look. I'm impressed that they're actually responding to the way they should.
Yeah, and apparently that's been put in on Birds of Prey as well.
Oh, awesome.
And segue, another Klingon ship.
Yeah, the Klingon love.
Yeah.
So there's a new Vorcha refit, and it's a pretty mean-looking Klingon ship. I don't know if I say I'm a total fan of the design.
I think you kind of got to like the Vorcha to start with in order to...
I don't like much beyond the Bird of Prey when it comes to Klingon stuff.
That's personally my style as well.
Yeah, it's just classic.
I probably want to preface this that neither of us have gotten it. We don't have high enough level Klingons, sorry.
No.
So most of this information comes to us from a cool guy in our community named Sausage Meister.
Who is?
Honorable KDF correspondent for the day.
Sausage Meister is today's KDF correspondent. Thank you, sir.
But he says the actual ship itself you can buy with energy credits. Just flat out, just buy it.
And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Now, some of the great things about the Vorcha that have been mentioned, though, is it's a cruiser type variant for the Klingons.
So what is that?
But it has a great turning rate. At last, they have a ship, a big ship, a big, meaty, resilient ship that they can put cannons on.
Kind of like I feel like the Excelsior is a big, meaty ship that turns pretty well. It's not the same equivalent, but that's really cool.
So if you're out there looking for a good, I guess kind of a mid-range ship, it's not a Bird of Prey, it's not a carrier.
Yeah.
It's pretty much right in the middle, but it's got, you can bring those cannons to bear. You might want to look into it.
I really just need to sit down and spend more time on my Klingon character, and I could see myself working towards this.
Yeah, I could too.
I really could see myself. I'd probably be...
After talking to Sausage Meister, I feel like this is a really great ship to get.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Do you want to talk about the new Dividian episode 2 we got? The Spin the Wheel episode?
Yeah.
Whoa there. Now, so... Hold up. Let's start at the very beginning.
Okay.
You essentially... the story continues, and you go to the...
When last we met.
What's the name of the station?
Drazana.
The Drazana station.
Yeah.
First of all, I still continue to have a hard-on for this station.
Yeah.
And the more... and just going throughout this episode... I got even more raging wood for this station. I love every single thing about this station.
Wow.
I love it's where it's located in the STO universe.
Mm-hmm.
I love where it is located in the Star Trek universe. I love the design of it. I love the concept behind it. I love the work behind it. I love the fact that it's falling apart, and that I love that when I like the Ferengi got down there and they had to wipe for weeks. They had to wipe blood, the blood wine off the walls, and I mean, I love that it's falling apart and that it's just you can see that, and they have cargo ships holding parts on and all this stuff, and I love that the Dividians have chosen this location to feed because it's so perfect. It's perfect within the laws of Star Trek because this is neutral territory. The Federation doesn't have jurisdiction.
And there's plenty of conflict to cover up their activities.
And really, honestly, if the Dividian are down there polishing off a few lazy Klingons, that's not so much skin off the Federation's back to begin with, so there's not a lot of reason to get involved. But so what does that mean? That means Section 3001 has to be the one getting started because they realize that the Dividians are just starting there and they're going to be a bigger threat, but they know the Federation isn't going to get off their butts. So Section 31 is getting involved.
Right.
It makes Star Trek logic.
Yeah.
I love that about this episode.
I agree with you.
All right.
I'm going to be poo-pooing on this quite a bit, but I have to say that at conceptual levels, this episode and the whole arc so far, I know it's only 2 episodes, but everything that I've encountered at a conceptual level on this is great.
Yeah.
I really like the stories and the larger concepts going on here.
Right.
Some of the finer execution is severely lacking at this time, though. One of the first things you do in this mission is you have to reroute power in order to basically bribe the Ferengi to give you the information that you want.
Restore his replicators, essentially.
Okay, 2 things. First of all, you could just wander the station and find the person you're looking for.
Yeah.
Secondly,
in fact, I almost would have liked to have been able to do that.
Yeah.
Really.
And just skip the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now
here's the problem. Is I actually it was
kind of a duh moment when I walked up to her and I was like, "So why did I?" She was right.
Yeah.
But
yeah. That was my experience too. Now what I want to say is I like puzzles and solving things.
Yes.
And I got out notepad and paper and I wrote down notes.
If you turn the page, my notes are on the next page.
J-Man writes his notes too while he played it.
They're a little more cleanly.
I was kind of free. I was kind of free balling. Well, I didn't realize I was like, wow, I'm gonna actually need to keep track of a lot more stuff.
Yeah.
Part of me likes that.
Yeah.
Part of me felt like I might have been at work.
Yes.
And because what I had to do was I had to parse language again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind doing it all the time. I don't mind doing it from time to time. I kind of mind doing it all the time.
But we mentioned it in the previous episode as well, that there was a lot of reading comprehension required. You had to read through and parse what was important and what was not. And they basically took that same concept back. I think that Star Trek fans on a whole are smart enough to figure this stuff out.
And we were able to work our way through it, and there was satisfaction when you completed it. I thought, okay, good, cool. But here's the problem. I think here's what would have been better. What if you could have just provided, what if there was just a core logic that energy paths have to pass through these things and then they'll turn on? And what if, instead of reading all this stuff, you could have just routed from one system to the next system to the next system. So maybe slightly less complicated, but you're routing power through systems after you maybe read some dialogues. And then instead of running back to the Ferengi, what if then you had to go check to see if the replicators were flashing on? And then those were working, and then you could walk up to the Ferengi. And so it's what I'm saying is instead of interpret, oh, that means that's clever, interpret, take a note, and then do, I'm just saying make it actually, almost like those musical peers that you did, have one turn on and then go turn on another one, and then it goes ding ding ding,
so
and then the replicators turn on.
More visual cues.
Yeah.
I think that in order to do that, you really needed to instance the area. I think that they should have done that to begin with for a couple reasons. One is there were a whole bunch of people throwing those stupid brain cryo grenades all over the damn place.
Luckily, I did see that happening to you. That did not happen to me.
Yeah. So that was just a frustration. The other thing, though, is, I mean, you were sent down here because you were trying to fix the Ferengi systems in order to bribe him into giving you information. You get down there, and there's 400 other people doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, I know, and that doesn't work.
And suddenly, you're somehow magically the one that does it.
I totally get why Cryptic did that.
I don't.
Oh, because these new weekly episodes have made the game so much more social all of a sudden, just simply because everybody is seeing everybody show up. Like when we beam down to the station, you stand in the transporter pad and it's just beaming after beaming after beaming. There's just people coming in like crazy.
You know, for the upper level of Drazana and the beam-in station, love that.
Yes.
I really do. And when later on we'll talk about when you're around the Dabo table, love it. Those were great. The social areas there were great.
Yeah.
Having people down there with you in the instance where you're supposed to be repairing the station, I think
should have been
took away from the reality.
They probably didn't want you to have to zone.
I don't know. I don't really know the reasons.
There's the fear of the zone, but really it was too hectic. I tried to roll with it because I totally thought they're trying to make this a social game. They want this one to be the social weekly episode.
But there was no reason to work with anybody on this. If they wanted it to make it social, they should have done something more like the Deferi puzzles that require teamwork among multiple people. Or that were made easier by teamwork.
Then people could have been using zone chat to team up, and maybe they were. Maybe I just didn't see any of that. That might have been maybe that was happening. Maybe people met in game for the first time that will now play the game together for a while or something. Who knows?
I doubt it.
Yeah, that's.
There was also some nebulous wording in the whole explanation of the logic puzzle. I just felt like it wasn't made clear how the puzzle works. When I went back and reread it after I learned what the solution was, I could see how that made sense. But it's almost like you need somebody that doesn't know how it works to write how it works.
I got it, but I really had to work at it, and it was a little harder to focus because it was so active.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So let's move forward from there.
Yeah. The next step of it, after you get the information from the Ferengi, is to go meet the gal over at the Dabo table, who's like your Section 31 contact.
She's kind of an interesting character.
Right. So you go over to talk to her, and you have a little bit of conversation with her. You try to assure her that you're there to help, and all of a sudden she says, "Shut up, go play Dabo."
Yeah. Yeah. And you go over to Hololito and you play Dabo. Yeah.
Why?
Well, they wanted to work Dabo into the story.
I mean, they explained it in a little bit.
Yeah.
Later on they have like Lita actually interacts with you to give you the next step of the story, and that by that point it made sense. And then I was like, oh, yeah. But
now you didn't have to play Dabo for long.
No, I think it only took me one spin. Yeah. I don't know if you had to win. I actually won on my first spin.
I did pretty good on my spin. Well,
but when the contact told me go play Dabo, I was actually shocked. I sat there and was like, I don't want to play Dabo.
Here's why. They didn't build it enough, I guess. But the theory is you're at this slimy Ferengi run station, and you're going to go into this gal, and she's an undercover agent, so she's like a bar lounge, or a bar, whatever those are called. Someone who's always hanging out in a bar. And
a morn.
And so now she's supposed to try to interact with you like she's just part of it, like you're one of the people there. So you go in there, you talk to her a little bit, you go have a drink, you sit down at the Dabo table, you play poker, but you're playing Dabo for a little bit, and then she comes over and grabs you, and you talk to her and you get the information. That's the idea, but you have to paint so much of that picture yourself,
right? That
it just doesn't really happen.
It didn't click with me, and I felt frustrated by the fact that I couldn't. If I was being my character, if I was trying to role play this up, I would have left. I would have contacted Drake and said, "You know what? Your contact's being a bitch. I'm out."
Yeah. I got Klingons to go blow up. I got Dividians to hunt down. I'm not going to go play Dabo.
There's still Borg out there I got to take care of. I don't have time for this.
So true. So I was trying to paint that picture, and in that light, I was just having fun with it. I wasn't super engaged.
Yeah. Now, the rewards were great, though.
Mm-hmm.
The rewards, one of them was hidden, actually. I'll tell you about that. One of them was a really great ground weapon.
Yeah.
A proton rifle.
Yeah.
Which is funny. Somebody brought this up later in chat. A proton from Ghostbusters.
Yes.
Proton rifle.
Yeah, proton pack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
that.
They're
Davidians. They look like ghosts.
I like that. I think that's adorable.
The other reward, actually, is that
once tying two awesome franchises together.
I know. Later on, when you turn in the mission with Drake, you get unlocked so that you can buy a special type of food back at Drozana Station. If you go back there and you feed it to the right tribble,
surprise, surprise,
you can breed a new tribble that will give you Dividian-related buffs. So, neat.
You know what? It's good for the weekly series. So
yeah.
When you're playing this one and when you're gonna replay it, you just have like a tribble equip.
Right.
You just bank those tribbles for when you're going to go play those weekly series.
I do want to warn you, though, even though this tribble gives you a generic damage resistance buff, it makes you vulnerable to proton damage. So you probably don't want to use it in like ground PvP because other people might be using the proton rifle.
Which is exactly why they did that.
Right. So they give you something that's a nice PvE bonus, but will penalize you in PvP.
Dude, we have got a great interview coming up. Is there anything else you want to cover in the top segment here?
Not really.
All right. Well, so if you remember, it was like a week or two ago, we put out the question to you in our community feedback segment. Send us in who you would like us to interview in the show, and send us
some good questions. Yeah.
So we're just about wrapped up with that. A couple of weeks ago, we got Daniel Stahl on the show, and on this week's episode, we've got someone new. We've got Jesse Heinig on the show, and maybe if you've been on the forums, you've seen him, but we've got a pretty good interview with him. So we're going to roll that for you now, and then stay tuned. After that interview, we've got an entirely new community feedback segment
with a new question.
All right, J-Man, let's roll the interview. We're excited to have Jesse Heinig on the line from Cryptic Studios. Well, I guess you can call on Skype on the line, right?
Right.
I do, at least.
Close enough.
Yeah. Well, hey, Jesse, thanks for joining us. So give us your official title down there at Cryptic Studios.
Well, I'm a game designer for Cryptic. I'm focused on Star Trek Online. I predominantly do content work, which means designing missions and characters, although I've done a little bit of cross-training in systems to handle powers and items as well.
Oh, really? Interesting. Now, did you kind of come on board with the new weeklies, or were you already getting things going before that all started?
I came on board a couple of months back, so I've had the opportunity to get up to speed by working on tiny little side projects and then moving into the weeklies, starting with the Dividian series that's coming up.
What are some of the...
Or actually has already started.
Yeah. What are some of those tiny little projects that you've already done? Have we seen some of your handiwork already?
A little bit. If you've run around Memory Alpha and seen the new tutorial on how to do crafting, that was a tiny little thing that I put in. It's very straightforward because it's supposed to be an easy and simple and straightforward. Here's how you take things to general crafting and make things out of them.
Sure.
But definitely necessary. Now, Jesse, right. I know from just because I know you, I've done all my research and my internet stalking ahead of time. So I know that you are a big Trekkie. A great big fan of Star Trek outside of before you even started at Cryptic.
Which is awesome that you're working on Star Trek Online then, because that's
absolutely.
It's great to know that fans are in there giving it their love. Now, I'm curious if you have any like really good stories to tell about what got you into Trek. Any great memories?
It's kind of one of those, that's so sweet. I grew up watching reruns of the original series with my dad when I was a kid.
That is sweet.
So,
isn't that your story?
Pretty much, yeah. Aw.
Right. Aw. And then, of course, I graduated into watching Next Generation through high school and DS9 and Voyager and everything after that. And then by the time Enterprise rolled around, I was working on the Star Trek RPG at Decipher, so that was mandatory viewing.
Many of our viewers actually requested that we get you on our show as an interview because they are fans of your Decipher Star Trek RPG. I'm curious, though, and on their behalf, I'd like to ask you, are there any major systems from your pretty well-known RPG that might be making their way into STO in some translation?
Question.
That's an interesting question. Obviously, the Decipher system doesn't work at all like the system that's used in STO.
I'm shocked.
But that's not to say that some of the content or ideas that we've used in the Decipher system might not make their way in. In fact, if you have watched very carefully, you may have already seen a couple of them. We have had some new little experiments with our non-combat missions, diplomacy, and one of the non-combat missions in the Breen series arc, where we have the players running around and trying to figure out how to use a particular medical tool or a specific device, or to remember a specific piece of Star Trek lore. If you look at resources like Memory Alpha, for instance, you could look up Axonol or an etrazine, but it's hard to find a comprehensive listing of here's all of these things and what they do. But when you look in role-playing games, they have all of that source material because players want to use it. So it's kind of handy reference.
That's extremely interesting. I'd never thought of that, and I'd like to pick your brain on another topic. There's been some recent statements, I think that you made yourself, maybe it was in the forum if I recall, about diplomacy integration coming to other missions, and I just wanted to know if there was any areas you wanted to expand on that.
The diplomacy system obviously is a trackable stat. We know how far a character has gone in diplomacy. We know what rank you are. We know how many points you have. And what this means is that we know how much you've decided to commit your character to developing that aspect of your Star Trek field. You've made a meaningful choice, and we want to reward you for making that choice. So I give you the option to make additional choices based off of that. So in one of the upcoming episodes, if all goes well, you may see opportunities for characters who have sort of specialized in that diplomacy, or who have taken the grind, if you will, and gained levels in the diplomacy system to use that diplomacy in order to find alternative solutions to problems that they're facing in the mission.
Well done.
Yeah.
So that I'm really looking forward to that.
There might even be a special accolade.
Oh, and you always like those. Now, do you have any thoughts on the current activity levels of the Klingon content and things like that? I've noticed that at least now. What's your forum ID? Because I want to make sure it's you that I'm tracking in the forum.
My forum ID is Jay Heinig, and I do drop in on the Klingon forums from time to time.
Yeah, I've noticed you in there quite a bit. Now, is that because you're involved with some Klingon content, or what's going on?
I have taken a look at Klingon content. Right now, it's Gozer, of course, who's doing a lot of Klingon work. But I'm aware of what's been going on with the Klingon content. I have a Gorn character that I play Klingon side when I'm playing on the live server. And so I kind of like to keep an eye on what's going on there. I believe that Klingon players should not feel like they're completely neglected. We have been trying to get additional material in for Klingons. So as you may have seen posts from a few of the other devs, there's some Klingon ships that are coming down the line. And Gozer, of course, is working on ways to open up some of the additional sector space and give Klingons alternative ways to do missions. Similarly, in the weeklies that I'm working on, there's a couple of ways for Klingons to do things that Federation can't do, or ways that they approach the mission a little bit differently. But for instance, because I'm giving diplomatic rewards in one of the missions, the Klingons don't have a diplomacy system in place yet. So I didn't want to just say, well, you're playing Klingons, too bad. So instead, there's an alternative sort of hidden goal that you can achieve as a Klingon that has a different little bonus tied to it. So I want the Klingon players to feel like, yes, we are paying attention to what's going on with you, and yes, there are going to be things for you to do.
Now, okay, I do want to move on from some of the STO stuff because, like I said, I did some internet stalking, and I learned one of the things you're most famous for is your work on Fallout.
Absolutely.
And I believe Fallout 2 as well, if I'm correct, right?
A little bit, but a lot of the Fallout 1 team actually did not transition over to Fallout 2. There was, I would hazard to guess that maybe half or 2/3 of the team transitioned over, but there were a lot of people who didn't, or who partway through felt that they were not getting a good direction. For instance, famously, Troika got formed out of that whole debacle when Tim Kaine and Jason Anderson and Leonard Boyarsky all said, we're not getting a good direction on this and we're going to form our own company.
You were integral in, I believe, creating the special stat system. Is that correct? Am I remembering my facts right?
You're correct. This is a bit funny. We, of course, originally were going to be a GURPS licensed game.
Right.
And that agreement sort of fell through, and as a result, we wound up having an emergency meeting and saying we need a new game system because we're obviously not going to cancel this game that everyone's put all this work and money into. and I said, okay, here's my recommendations, and I threw down a bunch of different systems on the table. Actually, the first system I threw down was a version of Special where all of your stats would have started at 0. 0 was your baseline average, and negative scores were bad and positive scores were good, which you'll recognize if you ever played Ars Magica in the role-playing game market. And that was a little too cerebral for your casual player. They're not used to the idea
negative
of 0
numbers
is
are
okay.
Weird.
Yeah, right.
I found out that the reincarnation of one of your characters made it into Fallout 3. Dogmeat.
Dogmeat's also an interesting story. I cannot wholly claim credit for it. No, Dogmeat was mentioned in a design doc for Junktown, which I was working on as the designer who was putting Junktown together in the original Fallout.
Have you been able to play New Vegas yet? And did you get enough time with Fallout 3 that you might be able to give us your thoughts on how the franchise evolved over time?
I got plenty of time with Fallout 3. I thought that Fallout 3 was a very fun game, and I know that all of the people that know Mutants Allowed and whatnot are going, oh, how can he say that? Because Fallout fans are very devoted and passionate about their love of the franchise, and that means that they have specific things that they want to see, certain like other certain fan groups we know. So I felt that there was more of a focus on sort of the exploration of the wasteland and the freeform sandbox that Bethesda does very well, and less on character development, which was more of a hallmark of the original Fallout and Fallout 2.
When they were creating New Vegas, they said that they were going to try to focus a bit more on that and also some of the goofy comedy that showed up in Fallout 1 and 2.
Well, that's no surprise, considering that a lot of the New Vegas developers are, of course, veterans from the original Fallouts. And so I expect that New Vegas would have that sort of character-centric and story-centric feel, where you feel like there's a big story that's unfolding that you're taking a major part in, and your actions have a huge effect on it. I think that the idea that this game has to have a particular thing or can't have a particular thing is kind of confining. This is not to say that there aren't elements of Fallout 3 that made me go, I maybe didn't agree with that execution, or I would have done it differently, or I would have liked something out of the game. It's going to be inevitable that my vision is not going to perfectly align with the designers. That doesn't mean that the designer did a terrible job or that the game is awful. It just means that maybe that part of that game isn't for me. I mean, heretically, I was not a huge fan of Dragon Age. I found the micromanagement of the combat.
Actually, two of a kind here. I was not a fan either. I know it was a bestseller and everything. Actually, I want to touch on something that you mentioned.
Never working for BioWare now.
I want to touch on something you just mentioned kind of offhandedly earlier. Fallout fans are rabid. Star Trek fans have been considered even more rabid.
Yeah.
Have you had any run-ins so far that you'd kind of taken aback or anything? Or how are you dealing with the fans of Star Trek Online so far?
Well, if you did your internet stalking, you know that I was also the developer for Mage, the Ascension for White Wolf, for several years.
That's right.
And that was a game that had some infamous flame wars in the forums. And it got to the point that about 3 months ago, I actually had someone pop in anonymously on one of my internet journals and wish me death over that, which kind of it was a decade ago. Walk it off.
Yeah. Walk it off.
The internet.
You can't go on the internet without a thick skin. I think that it's the same when you're dealing with Star Trek fans. They are committed because they love this thing, and there is something in the property that resonates with them personally, something that they believe in, something that they feel strongly about, something that they love, something that they see as a fundamental part of who they are. And so I understand where that sort of love comes from, that these people have such a strong investment.
Right.
And so you can't get mad or upset at people who are saying, oh my gosh, why can I not do a barrel roll in my ship? You have ruined Star Trek for all time.
Right.
Because to them, this is a fundamental component. And, it makes me sad that I can't make everyone happy with what we want to provide. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to dismiss these people or say you're a bunch of kooks or whatnot. Although
that's what we say, though.
Before you post angry flames on our forums or elsewhere on the internet, I would say, tone it back a little bit. I mean, the world's still going to be there tomorrow.
Yeah, walk it off a little bit first. Yeah, exactly.
I was going to ask you a little bit about the Infinity Ward thing going on, because I know that you worked back there in...
Let's do it.
Was it 2004? And 2000?
That sounds about right, 2003, 4. It was Call of Duty 2.
Good internet stalking, dude.
I know.
Man. So with this whole Infinity Ward versus Activision and the split between those two companies, and obviously the bad blood there and the animosity.
Speaking of not pleasing everybody.
Yeah. What is your impression of this entire breakdown of a process, whatever you want to call it?
I think that there is a big divide that has not been well addressed in most creative industries, not just video games, between the marketing and management of a business versus the creative development of a franchise or an IP. You need people who are really strongly invested in it and are willing to give it the time that it takes for real quality. Conversely, your management and marketing cycle says, look, the reality of the business world is we have this much time and this much money. Oftentimes, the profitability on these things is not just from, say, selling a game, but from the whole IP. I mean, Duke Nukem Forever has done the impossible by being delayed for so long that it has come out the other end and become interesting. The fact that it's been delayed for so long.
So true.
But once you start marketing your IP, you have a window of opportunity where people are interested, and after that they say this is old news. So to get to specifics with Infinity Ward and Activision, I think that Activision as a production studio was looking for ways to say, okay, we have to deliver an experience that is repeated annually, otherwise the franchise is going to fall behind. And whether that's true or not, it creates this image in the mind of the buyer. So you have to be relevant and you have to be current if you want to stay fresh on the marketplace.
Jesse, I'm going to ask you a question that might get you in a little bit of trouble at Cryptic, but do you feel like the atmosphere there at Cryptic between their interaction with Atari, do you think it's better set to create a better artistic product that still delivers?
Atari gives us a lot of leeway. They love the work that we do, and they are very understanding of how we do it. That is the feeling that I've always gotten from here personally.
That's encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think on that encouraging note, I think
that's a good note right there, Jesse, to let you go. But I wanted to say thanks very much for joining us on Stoked. You're now part of a small club there at Cryptic who has come on the show, and so it's always great.
Two of which left the company, actually.
Yeah.
So,
but although one of which, the first one got a promotion in a big way, so it sometimes works out for you, Jesse. So just good luck. Good luck with that, sir. All right, Jesse. Well, thanks for coming on Stoked, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much, guys.
Goes with it. He suggests that at a certain
right.
They would be up to their share.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Thank you again to Jesse for joining us on the show, and I've been personally a fan of this latest series of getting the people from Cryptic on to answer the community's
Absolutely.
questions.
I'd actually like to thank you guys for sending in those emails. Yep. We asked for them, and you delivered.
Now, we have kind of a serious note we wanted to touch on. We've dedicated this episode to a fan of Stoked. He goes by Captain Xavier Blackwood in Stowe, and his family recently notified us that he has been following the show since the early beta days, but unfortunately, he's kind of had some bad circumstances come up, and he had a seizure, and he's in a coma now. And they suspect that he possibly has around a 30% chance of surviving. And, of course, here at the show, we're hoping that he beats the odds.
Absolutely.
But we wanted to dedicate this episode of Stoked to him, and hopefully everything turns out great, and if we hear one way or the other, we'll
Good luck,
let you know.
Captain Blackwood.
Yes, sir. All right, Jerms. So let's talk about our question for the community going forward. Maybe we'll get spotlighted in the next episode of Stoked. That'll be Tuesday over at Jupiter Broadcasting.
I think you guys are going to dig this one.
All right, dude.
Because we get a lot of submissions, and now we're giving you your chance to voice it. What we want from you is to send us your absolute best Star Trek Online related URL that you think nobody's heard about.
Yeah, community resource, anything that you think adds value to Star Trek Online. Something really great that we could spotlight on the show to maybe drive some traffic to. For example, I'll give you my pick. STOwiki.
Yeah.
It's stowwiki.org, and I forget, it's run by a fleet now, I think, or at least it's being contributed to majorly by a fleet.
Omega Fleet, I believe.
Okay,
right.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And I just think this could be a fantastic resource for the Star Trek Online community.
Absolutely.
So I really would like to see some attention given to that.
I totally agree with this. I totally agree with giving them some face time as well, because with any wiki, you're really relying on your content contributors and your editors.
Live and die by the contributors and the editors.
Yeah.
So they really have to get some involvement in order for it to be successful.
Absolutely.
What about you?
My pick is actually a new one that's gearing up right now, and I don't think that this website is fully fledged, but I'm watching it closely.
Okay.
Dedicated entirely to the Foundry. This site is called starbaseugc.org.
Good one.
And it's launching, like I said, right now, and they're including tutorials on how to kind of wrap your head around certain 3D environment modeling and stuff like that to help you basically come up with the best player-authored missions that you can.
Now, we should make a caveat. I don't know if we made this disclaimer. we were kind of hoping that everyone would narrow it down to one URL.
Well, yeah, we want to say...
Or at least ask, this is the URL, and then list the secondaries and the tertiaries, and maybe the quadutiaries.
Quadutiaries?
Quadutiary.
Fourth place.
And then, but really, we want to know which one is the one for you, and that hopefully will make you really have to think about the one, and then the best ones we're going to list in the show. We're going to feature on. We're going to give you tours of them, all that kind of.
I look forward to filling up my entire bookmark. Calendar folders with all of these.
I think I'm going to be looking forward to them over the next week. So send those over to STOked@JupiterBroadcasting.com, and then we'll be featuring those probably over the next few episodes. We're also potentially lining up, at least in the near-term future, another interview to sort of round off that section of the community feedback.
Right.
We're not totally declaring the interview's done yet. No, we got some Kindles going.
Right.
Not the books. I'm talking about a fire, people. All right, everyone. Well, I think that just about wraps up this week's episode of Stoked. And we come out every Tuesday over at JupiterBroadcasting.com. But we're doing these more and more. I think we're close to declaring we're doing it live every Saturday.
That's when the weekly missions ran?
At least, yeah.
So
at least when the weeklies are doing it, we're doing it live on Saturday. And
we play through them live on the stream, and then we just kind of sit around and do the episode right after it.
Yep. We've been going, right now it is 3:55 p.m., and we've been out. I started the live stream around 10:45 a.m.
I'll be honest, my butt kind of hurts.
Yeah, we've been out here a while doing stuff. But you can always find out more about that over at facebook.com/JupiterBroadcasting, or if you're not a fan of the Facebook, we understand. There's always JupiterBroadcasting.com/calendar. There you go. Okay,
there
everyone.
You go.
We'll see you next week.
And you can hear us just fine, right?
Absolutely.
Great.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be answering.
What did you say?
I said otherwise I wouldn't be answering.
Aha.
Aha. I see what you did there, or here, as the case may be.